And we're back. I'm Professor Scott Plum with the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Are you a logical salesperson who relies on facts, features, and benefits to make the sale, but ignores the emotional side of the sales process? Or perhaps you're a relationship salesperson who focuses on being liked to close the deal. In either case, you can benefit by learning more about the psychological side of influence and selling. So get focused for a great discussion on how to take advantage of Cialdini's 6 Principles of Influence, Part 2, and much more on episode 430 of the Get in the Door podcast.
So in the book club this week, from the book Beyond Selling Value, we're going to cover chapter 3, titled The Power of Research, Digging for Clues. And this chapter talks about getting data, which is different than information. Chapter 4, we're going to be talking about information. And I think there's really an important difference between data and information. Today, we're going to talk about where you're going to get information about the prospect. Information is going to be related to reasons for change. And I think one thing we need to all keep in mind is that people change based on their problems. The bigger the problem, the more that they're willing to pay for it. And the more information that we can get from them, the motivations to change is going to be helped by the amount of data that we can get. And I think it's really important to find data, but not to spend too much time on getting data. And
yeah,
often,
I like that. I thought that if you take everything in the chapter and try to do it all, you're going to be inundated with information, and you don't have time to dig that deep if you're doing 3 or 4 appointments a day.
And Bill, what's a reasonable amount of time for somebody to spend researching a company, getting data from about them?
Well, I think it depends on how good you are at it, but I would probably say a half hour to an hour of pre-approach is about what I'm going to have time for if I'm going to have a number of appointments during the week. But it really depends on how important that appointment is, right? If this is a mega company incorporated, you may want to spend, and you've taken a year to try and get this appointment. Well, you may want to take a considerable amount of time to prepare for that. If this is regular customer, medium size, maybe you take a half hour. So it can depend on how important it is.
I agree with that. Let's say it's the first call. You haven't talked to anybody there. You're calling them. You're reaching out for them for the very first time. How much time?
At what level, right?
Well, you're going to try to get a hold of a person. So you've done a little bit of research. You found out, in most cases, you talk to a C-level person, and now you know who that is. So you've gone on LinkedIn, you find out the name of that person. You got the location, so you know where they're physically located.
Know their business and their product, their competitors. Right,
and you can find that on the website. And you've got a general industry that you're working with, so you're familiar with that. So there's a lot of past information that can be useful.
Right. And if this isn't your first time, if this isn't your first rodeo, you should know a little bit about the industry.
Yeah.
Right. You're not coming into it totally ignorant about what's going on in the world. So you've been talking to this kind of customer. So you should be building up a storehouse of information over time.
Mm-hmm. My approach is you spend probably about 5, 10, 15, maybe 15 minutes on the initial research for the phone call. What is the goal of the phone call? You're calling somebody and you're interrupting them. So what is the goal? The goal is to schedule a time to talk more.
Right. Catch their attention enough, give them enough insight that I've thought about their company a little bit. And that's probably the area that I'm seeing a lot more need for research is before I contact them, or I'm just another part of the masses saying, hey, here's a form letter. Come and call me now. Right. So if I don't dig a little bit into who they are, if they're important enough, I want to know a little bit about their company to say, here's how I can relate to you.
Mm-hmm. And in some cases, we don't need to even relate to their company specifically. We can relate to the industry and some of the challenges that we've worked with in the past. So now you're taking all of that past experiences, you're leveraging it forward. The point that I want to get at is too often salespeople spend too much time researching before they make an initial call. Yeah. And I've seen it time and time again where somebody's sitting at their desk and they're looking at a website and they're clicking on this and they're going there. And I'm like, how's it going? What are you up to? Well, I'm getting ready for making this first phone call. Okay. How much information do you need to know about them to pick up the phone and dial and set an appointment to talk more about what you do and where they're at and see if there's a fit and a match to continue and have another conversation. And it's about 10 to 15 minutes. Salespeople love just doing all of this research, and then all of a sudden they call the place and they find out they're out of business, or they find that the person's no longer with the company. And it's like, okay, how's that going for you? You ever get that time back? No.
Right.
So often then when we call them, we read their website off to them. Well, I can see you do this, this, and this. They're like, and the prospect's thinking, so what? I don't care.
Right.
Big deal. You can read.
Yeah, you're not connecting it to a problem or an issue, throwing something out there that magnifies that you have dealt with companies like them before and with their issues.
Right. And I think information changes, data changes. So we want to get data now, not what happened, not what's in the past, because sometimes it's just so old. I looked up, information about my company, and it's so off. They've made up numbers because I'm not giving any information to anybody. And if somebody wants information, call me. Let's have a conversation. I'm not just going to throw it all out there.
And I think that's maybe you're getting to the point that my initial phone call isn't to sell you. My initial phone call is to sell you on the appointment.
Yeah, right.
And
exactly.
People try to take it too far, get a little bit of information to make that call. Then if you get the appointment, then you have to dig a little bit deeper and have a little bit more of a strategy before that meeting with the C-suite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
And that's why I think if you read this chapter, well, a couple problems with this chapter. I liked it, and I like their approach. And I do know at one point they said, don't overdo it, right? It's only worth so much time. But I thought the chapter was very dated. We have it so much easier now with the internet at our fingertips. If it's a major corporation, you can find their annual report online, and you can read the president's letter really quickly to find out what their goals and desires are for the year. You can go online and find out who the executive officers of a company are, and that's usually pretty well updated, and their backgrounds. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this stuff is at your fingertips. It's 5 to 10 minutes, and you've really done all the things you need to do to get in your head what's going on at that company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think this is a chapter that, we talked with Dan initially, and he said we're going to be updating it. I felt this chapter really could definitely use an update because it can all be found online. So,
and it just goes to show how fast the market changes. I mean, this is 20 years ago this book was written. It's got still great, very much relevant information in the book on sales and selling value and a process that still works, but there are evolutions and transformations within a marketplace that I think salespeople need to stay current with. And I think our listeners are those types of people that want to stay current because they want to get relevant information for today's marketplace.
Well, what is current and what hasn't changed, right? I know you talk a lot about buying on emotion and buying on need, and I don't think that's changed at all over the years.
No, it hasn't.
We've gotten smarter about how we tie into that, and how that's reflected in an organization may have changed. So understanding what I need to change as a salesperson and what I can go back to, that is, when we're going to talk about the power of influence. Those are psychological factors in people in the world that really haven't changed. Mm-hmm. So I don't think people at their core change, but maybe how they get information, how they use technology, those have certainly changed.
I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that people don't know how much, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And in sales, there's a lot to learn, but here's what you need to know is that people change for their reasons, not yours. And the best step that you can have is the one where you're sitting across the table from somebody who has an emotional interest, is involved with consequences and can take risks, and is in a position to be able to change the direction of the company based on who they work with as a partner or resource, and can make a decision to proceed versus somebody that can only say no.
Yeah.
And too often we just get bumped off by somebody who can say no.
Well, I think, though, quite often how much you know is a sign of how much you care. Mm-hmm. So when you say people don't, they don't care how much you know, but by showing that I've done some pre-approach, I've done some research into your organization, I know who I'm talking to, that says that I care about you. And going to an appointment without that pre-approach, I think, is rude and amateurish. So make sure that you're doing the right amount. Don't, as Scott says, don't spend your entire day working on a program before you even make the phone call and find the guy isn't working there anymore. But do find out about the company and their goals, and that gives you a head start on finding out what their reasons are, so you can tie your product or service more closely to the needs that they have.
Mm-hmm. And also, don't be assumptive. If you feel like you're in a position of being assumptive, I think you need to preface the statement with, "I don't want to be assumptive, but is this the case here?" Blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
or I
Whatever.
found this with other companies and
Right.
other
Yeah.
clients that I've worked with. Is this true for you as well? And that keeps you from being assumptive, but also says, I understand this industry.
Yeah. Very powerful approach.
All right. So the next week, we're going to dive into a deeper into the research, which I think is more the first fact finding appointment with a company. So I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our book giveaway, we started a book giveaway. Dan and Mark were kind enough to give us a number of books that we're going to give away. All you have to do is go to getinthedoorpodcast.com, getinthedoorpodcast.com, and send us a comment. Just say you want to be put in the drawing, put your address in there so we know where to send the book. Our first winner is here in Minneapolis. Mitch Larson is our first winner in Minneapolis, and so we'll be sending a book out to him today. And so if you want to get a copy of Beyond Selling Value by Mark Shanka and Dan Kosh, actually autographed. I found that out, Scott. I didn't know that. They've autographed them for us.
Yeah, that's great.
So if you like autographed books, just go to getinthedoorpodcast.com, put your name in, send us a comment, ask us a question, and you'll be in the drawing.
This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by your host of Get in the Door podcast. Business is heating up, and now is the time to get back on the selling track. While others wait for the market to improve, prospects and opportunities await you now. Perhaps you want to be more productive on your prospecting, or you'd like to increase your closing percentage. Maybe having meetings online is not as comfortable as being in person. Sales reps are telling us they need some honest accountability and skill development to rise above the competition. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why the host of Get in the Door podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. For only $495, you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us your insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. After your 1-hour online session to jumpstart your coaching process, you will receive 5 more half-hour individual coaching sessions to enable you to make improvements over time and create new habits. Most salespeople make their money back with just one sale. Go to getinthedoorpodcast.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself and invest in your future.
So our key topic today is take advantage of Cialdini's 6 principles of influence, and this is part 2. So let me quickly recap the first 3 principles that we talked about in our last podcast, podcast 429. First one is reciprocity, and that's the idea that if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. When someone does something for us, we're more likely to want to do something for them. The second principle is liking, and that is that we tend to, when we have a choice to do business with someone we like versus someone that we don't like. And the third principle was scarcity, that items become more desirable when they're in short supply or difficult to acquire. And that might be like the Beanie Baby craze or Tickle Me Elmo or any of the type of things where it feels like there's less of them. So, for collectors, there's, you're one of 20, right? A friend of mine collects rock and roll memorabilia and he looks for the one of one. Wow. What's the only thing out there? And that's what he's willing to pay for. So scarcity is important to people and it increases the value of your product. Mm-hmm. So the 3 that we're going to talk about today, we'll start off with authority. And authority is that we're more likely to obey others if they're in a position of authority. So what are the things, Scott, that might show a position of authority?
I think a brand value, a familiar brand, familiarity breeds comfort. And I think there's 2 reasons why companies market or advertise. One is to build a brand, build a reputation, build familiarity. Another reason is to create a call to action or for them to do something after they see an ad or a marketing piece.
Right.
So the building the brand and building on the reputation.
Yeah, the reputation of the brand, I think, is key, right? What was the old saying? Nobody ever got fired for buying IBM.
Right. Nobody got fired for buying Blue.
Right. So it's that feeling that I have a safety in the authority of this brand.
And it really reduces the risk.
Yep.
And the consequences of something going wrong. And it seems like when you look at some positions of people in companies, you look at them and you go, who has the most to lose if something doesn't go right?
So our title can feel like authority, right?
A title can, but also, sometimes when you get into a committee, there's nobody to blame. Because we've got 6 people around us, and the committee decided. Well, not one person ever decided on it.
But usually there's one person in the committee that's pushing things. Every committee I've been in, there's one power broker, right? And you need to find out who that is.
The champion or the advocate that's pushing for it, and they're putting their reputation on the line. And unfortunately, they only get recognized if it goes bad. They don't get recognized if it goes good. So keep that in mind, that when you're selling to a committee, you need to be able to find out all of the emotional and personal interest on somebody supporting it.
I think we also need to talk about how we can increase our authority, though. So you're talking about the client authority, but from a sales standpoint, I want to increase my authority so that I'm more likely to be respected. So finding their authority figure is important, but I think some of the ways that we can increase our authority might be through a title. My son worked at a bank for a couple of years, and all of a sudden he was a vice president. I said, does that mean you get a limo? He says, no, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a vice president at our bank.
Right.
But that title, that's why they give that title. So you feel like that person has some authority to make a decision. Clothing can be a type of authority. A person in a uniform carries authority. That's why police have uniforms, because then we can immediately see that they're a person of authority. Our contract or the document we have can feel like authority. And I know that in selling, I think it's even Tom Hopkins uses the contract close. This is the contract, sign it. And in negotiation, we often point to the contract and say, well, that's what the contract says. And people, oh, okay, well, if that's what the contract says, they don't question that. So those are some ways that we can increase our authority when we're in the sales process.
Yeah, third-party stories can also be very influential because that shows past experience, and most likely you're going to share the ones that are successful. So that's a good move, by the way. So you're putting some past experience to leverage into the future. And
it shares the authority of the other person, right?
Yeah. Testimonials. Authority. I think LinkedIn recommendations are very important. I've got, I think, over 50 LinkedIn recommendations on my profile. Somebody calls me up, say, why should we hire you? And I say, well, I thought that we covered stuff that was important to you. Maybe, there's still some hesitation or some doubt. Maybe you want to, look at some of my LinkedIn recommendations and see if you know any of them. Feel free to call them, ask them what it was like to work with me. I'm perfectly fine with that. And you should probably do that just to make sure that you have peace of mind and you're willing to full on commit to our program. Because if you're hesitating at any part of it, then it's going to show in the team. And we don't want to have any doubt when we're working on transforming somebody's behavior.
I think the way we dress can provide some authority. I tend to wear suits and ties. Even now, just a sport jacket and a collared shirt is usually a little bit higher dressed than other people do. I like to dress just a little bit better than the people I'm working with. Maintains authority. And if I go in there underdressed, if I'm wearing a Dockers and a golf shirt, which is, it can look really nice, and everybody else is in suits, boy, I feel like I don't have much authority in that room. So that can have something to do with it as well.
Very true.
Excellent. Okay, the second one today, number 5, really out of the 6, commitment and consistency. This is the idea that people have a strong desire to follow through on their promises, and they want to appear or be seen as consistent. The old saying, your word is your bond, right? I do business with Scott on a handshake. I don't need a big contract. And so that's a desire of most people. And so if we can get people to make minor commitments, we tend to carry through on it. And those minor commitments start to lead to major commitments. So I think that's an interesting thing. What have you seen on the commitment and consistency and how it can help salespeople?
I think it all starts when you leave that first message on some prospect's voicemail system. You say, you're calling, this is the reason for your call. You look forward to a conversation. Please call me when you have a couple minutes. If I don't hear from you in 2 days, I will call you back.
Right.
Make a note. You got to call them back, because when you call them back and you followed up on your promise, and you're selling a service, the value of the service is defined by the confidence and credibility the prospect has in the bearer of a promise.
Yep.
If you start with those promises and you continue to do that for 6, 7, 8 times, people are going to take notice. Now, you got to wonder if they're still alive, and you have to wonder if they're still at the company. So at a point, you get to a voicemail and you say, I kind of get the impression maybe you've left the company. Maybe nobody's really taking care of this voicemail box anymore. I'm going to call and see if there's somebody else that I should be talking to. If I'm wrong, by all means, call me by the end of the day. If I don't hear from you tomorrow, I'm going to try to reach somebody else.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they're going to come out of the weeds going, no, I'm still here. It's just I've been busy and blah, 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 whatever. Okay, no problem. I understand.
So that's the salesperson's consistency. And I think that's very valuable in creating your own, that recommendation or that responsibility that we want to show. I think also we can use that in sales, that we don't need to get the major commitment on the customer in the first go around. We can get small commitments. Hey, let me talk to some other people in the organization. Let me do some needs assessment about this product or service within the organization. Let me do this for you. And then we get both the reciprocity, and if they agree to a needs assessment, then they're moving forward with the sales process. And so that's a little step that they can take without making the full decision, because they're agreeing to part of the plan. And now we can get them to agree to the next step and the next step and the next step. And I think often salespeople don't know what those steps are. So all they've got is either I close you on the whole deal, or, you say no.
Right. Yeah.
So little steps can move that in that commitment.
And sometimes getting a small commitment like a pilot program, or
Yep.
if they've got 100 stores, let's try 20, or let's try 50. Let's do half of them and just see how it goes. And right now there's no evidence to support that it's not going to work. So let's do a large quantity of it. And within that period of time, we're going to be able to know if we should roll it out to the other 50 and find out who the first 50 are, because most likely you're going to find people that want to be on the leading edge. They want to be progressive. They want to be competitive. They want to have something that nobody else has. And there's some people that just love that. They just buy that first. Great. Right. We want to work with them.
All right. Excellent. Okay. And then finally, number 6 is consensus. So remember your mom told you you don't have to do something because all of your friends were doing it?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that was consensus, right?
Yeah.
And she said, would you, if all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you do it too? And you're kind of thinking, I might, because that's consensus. Yeah. So if all my friends are doing it, I might want to do it too. I know kids who went out and got tattoos because, they wanted to be different like all their friends, right?
Yeah.
So being different like everyone else, and some of those things we do, we want to join in with the group. And so how can we use consensus as salespeople to encourage people to buy or make it easier for them to buy?
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier, but third-party stories, things that have happened in the past, others have felt the same way. There's that classic feel, felt, found close that really can become influential. But
if you overcoming objections with feel, felt, found.
Yeah. And if you validate a person's objection, you say, that's not uncommon. I've heard that a lot, and that's probably one of the most common of all of the reasons why somebody wants to hesitate on doing this. But can I ask you just one question? What do you suppose the main reason is that companies decide to work with us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And no matter what they say, you go, that's exactly it. You see, you're a perfect fit.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the slide in somebody's presentation that has all the logos on it of other companies they've done business with, right? Or the list on their brochure of all the companies they do business with? That's a way to say, look, at all these companies have done business with me, so you can feel comfortable as well. You talked about brand awareness and brand power. I think that's a consensus builder as well. As much as it works in authority, it also works in consensus to say, look at all the people that are buying this. Look at, how about McDonald's? Over 1 million sold, over 1 billion sold, right?
Wow. Yeah,
that was a big deal on their sign for years to say, look, at everyone likes this. Why don't you come here? And I think that's a great way to build consensus, that feeling that everyone else is doing it. So why don't I join in? There's a great video out there. Have you ever seen that video of the guy dancing at there's some kind of a concert or something?
Yeah.
And they did this video where a woman and a man got up and started dancing, and then a couple of people planned to join them. And once they got to like 10 couples, then the whole
Right.
crowd joined them. But
Yeah.
it was very hesitant until it got to a consensus level.
It's the herd mentality or the herd theory, and on a personal level, we see that with social media and how people have this fear of missing out. They want to be part of looking good, and they want to, show everybody what they're having for dinner. I mean, it's
right.
Like
I got to have my likes.
That's not important to me. I'm never going to be having food on LinkedIn or Facebook. I assure you.
I'm not gonna. I don't take pictures of my food. I just eat it. I'm too busy eating it to take pictures of it. So, absolutely. So the three, just to recap. Let's recap all 6 of them again. Reciprocity, doing something for others. They do things for you. Liking, we do business with people we like. Scarcity, items are more desirable when there's fewer of them. Authority, we're likely to obey others that are in a position of authority through a uniform or a title or a contract. Commitment and consistency, we want to follow through on our promises. And consensus, we want to do what everyone else is doing because obviously it's the right thing to do if enough people are doing it. Mm-hmm. So those are the 6 Cialdini's principles. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about those. I do have an article on it that we'll link on the website on getinthedoorpodcast.com. Anything else from you, Scott, to wrap it up?
No. I think that these are all good principles, and I think people should study them, learn them, and then find a way for them to incorporate into their sales behavior, and or look for them when you're a prospect and you're working with somebody that wants to try to sell or persuade you. So it's a good exercise.
Excellent.
So our golden nugget for today is a quote from Confucius, and that is, "He who learns but does not think is lost, and he who thinks but does not learn is in danger."
Well, I got to tell you, Scott, I got lost in the middle of that one. So I think you're going to need to explain it to me because I think Confucius is the root word for confusing sometimes.
It could be.
What does this one mean to you?
I, from my interpretation of it, and it is a bit philosophical, and it's playing within very close range.
I'm so simple.
A very close range of a couple of words, think and learn. So the first part, he who learns but does not think is lost. This is a person that is told what to do and goes out and does it, but doesn't contemplate the reason why, or doesn't understand the cog in the machine and to why it's important. So they're lost. They don't have a true identity, or they don't know where they're going. They have no vision of how the bigger picture works. And then the second part, he who thinks but does not learn is in danger. So if you're thinking about stuff, but you don't ever come upon a conclusion, or you don't learn anything, or you don't commit to something, then you're in danger of not growing or not finding different situations that you can build on, where you can define experience and use experience to your advantage. Too often, I've met people who have 25 years experience in sales, but it's the same week. I mean, it's the same week that they've lived over 25 years.
Right. And it's Groundhog Day, but they're not learning in between.
They're not listening. Yep. They're not understanding. They're snapping right back to the script. They're going here, they're going there. I mean, it's just amazing how some people can sit in a room, talk for 45 minutes and not say a thing.
Wait a minute. Did we just do that?
I hope not.
I hope not too.
Our listenership is going up significantly.
All right. Well, that's great.
I know that people are downloading the episodes or sharing with others, and we're really grateful when you do that. But it's really contemplating, thinking about what Bill and I are sharing, learning from it, and then most importantly, it's applying what you're most comfortable with. And sometimes you're going to have to stretch outside of your comfort zone to apply something that you don't know or that you don't really trust yet. But the only way that you're really going to be able to trust it is if you contemplate it and commit to it and then apply it. And then once you do that, I think you're going to get a different outcome. I guarantee you're going to get a different outcome because you're doing something different.
Yeah, I certainly believe in the application of knowledge, not just knowledge for its sake.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more, if you want to listen to the podcasts, if you want to sign up for the book drawing, go to getinthedoorpodcast.com, getinthedoorpodcast.com. All the information will be there, the show notes, and ways that you can contact either Scott or I for a question, a comment, or just to give us your address and be in the book drawing.
Next week, we're going to be covering Chapter 4, Beyond Selling Value, the Power of Research, Keys to the Customer Kingdom, and how to deliver difficult news.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.